The Canes made some of the biggest splash moves of the offseason for the NHL thus far. And it's obviously our nature to jump right into talking about how awesome Nikolaj Ehlers is. Or, ooh, what is the ceiling for Miller? How good can he be? But there's this whole other group that is maybe intently watching or listening for a different reason. And that's the players that are already on the Canes. I actually think this is one of the more underrated, stressful parts of the transfer portal in college now. Again, I'm just because I just watched it before the show. John Shire, Duke's basketball coach, talked to the media today, and his quote was, "The only day in the transfer portals that matters is the last day when the window is closing. That's the only day that matters because that's finally you can kind of relax." When a big-time player joins your team, if you are a player on that roster, I'm sure you start with excitement, makes us better. Maybe we'll go win in the postseason further than we've done. Maybe he's the missing piece. But I'm sure followed up shortly is, I wonder what that does to me. I wonder what that does to me. And there's a few questions that Ehlers and Miller bring to the Canes that still need answer. And luckily, we have a few clips from Rod Brind'amour that we'll be playing for you. But here's one that's interesting. Jackson Blake, as a rookie last year, skated a decent amount with the top line with the Canes. And I don't think he was perfect, but showed a lot of promise. A lot of people were really excited about him. Now that you bring in Ehlers, obviously, to be a top liner, you put Jarvis on the other side. You look at the second line, there's Svetch. You probably are thinking Taylor Hall, perhaps, on the other side.
Taylor Hall or Logan Stankoven, maybe?
Or Logan Stankoven. Stankoven could also potentially be with Martinook as the third-line wingers. Did Jackson Blake just become a fourth liner, potentially? Now, I would say, as a team, that's kind of awesome. Right, because if you have a stud on your fourth line, just imagine how good your top three lines are.
Yeah, he scored 17 goals last season.
If that's but for Jackson Blake, I'm sure you're fighting, right? You don't want to be a fourth liner. Now we have to decide who's going to end up being the second line center. But if that is a player with size, I think you might also entertain putting Taylor Hall as a fourth liner and Jackson Blake on the second line opposite Svetch, and then you have again, I think you need size at second line to make that work because Jackson Blake's not the biggest dude. But then I love the idea of Taylor Hall as a fourth liner, not just because, right, the better your fourth line is, obviously the better everything else that pushed them down to a fourth liner is, but also I've raved about the way I think he sees the ice, just veteran, seen everything twice. Him against maybe less experienced, less used players, if you're matching fourth line against fourth line, I think he'd make them look foolish at times. There's also this question of, I just listed a whole bunch of wingers. Keep all of those in mind, but then throw in also Eric Robinson. Actually, I'll just read them all for you one time real quick. New guy Ehlers, there's Jarvis, there's Fetch, there's Blake, there's Stankoven, there's Martinook, there's Hall, there's Robinson, there's Carrier. Is there space for Bradley Nadeau to get a chance? If we're talking about putting Jackson Blake potentially on the fourth line, I don't know where you put Bradley Nadeau, who was on the all-prospect team in the AHL last year, was a first-round pick a handful of years ago. Not even a handful, just a few. And with all of those guys, I believe all of those guys that I mentioned, now that Stankoven's under a long-term deal, under contract for at least 2 more years, you just put Bradley Nadeau on ice? No pun intended?
I mean, yeah, there's really no spot for him over the next couple of years when you think about it. Like you said, everyone's under contract with the exception of Jackson Blake's and RFA.
True. You're right.
But again, you still have, cost control.
I like organizational depth, but I mean, you got 13 forwards that really aren't going anywhere, and you have a rookie who's saying, or a would-be rookie whenever they get called up, saying, I've done what I can do in the AHL. Even if he scores 35 goals in the AHL this year, there's just no spot. And then there's this offhanded defenseman conversation, right? Because bringing in Keandre Miller, along with Jacob Slavin, along with Alexander Nikishin, along with Shane Gostisbehere, those 4 are all left-handed. You also have obviously Sean Walker and Jalen Chatfield that are right-handed, but which of those 4 is going to play off-handed? That's something they have to figure out. You assemble the most talent possible, then you look to Rod Brind'amour and say, you make it work. Well, luckily, Rod Brind'amour was on our network earlier today on the Adam Gold Show, and Rod was asked by Adam about figuring out who's going to be playing on their offside on defense. Here was part of his answer.
It's interesting because it's kind of a moot point. I know, we can fill time here talking about it, but everybody's probably going to move around a little bit this year. Maybe, in the past, it wasn't quite that way.
Uh-huh.
But I think just because there's some unknowns, somebody's going to have to move over. We like our group. Does Walks get a chance to play up a little more? Do we do Nikishin up and see, or do we, got to be careful about pushing him too hard? He's got a lot to learn. So I think all this is going to, kind of work itself out. But it's just great to have, a lot of good options.
So the answer is, we're going to see. We're going to give them all a chance. Whichever one of them does it best is kind of the way I read that. The good news is I do think Slavin, Chatfield, Walker, and I don't anticipate Slavin going offhand for obvious reasons. I think those guys are pretty good at covering for their partners in a lot of ways. So if there are growing pains, you'll have at least a guy or maybe 2 in some cases that can make up the difference on a line. So it's an interesting deal. And this is where I point out my blind spots, right? I've never played hockey. Okay. I've at least I played basketball, I'm a pretty good high school player, played baseball growing up, ran track, did all that, but played football in college. I have less than a handful of pickup hockey, with friends and family experiences. I don't know how difficult it is to play offhand.
I hate it.
That's with context. It stinks. So is it how much of a sacrifice is it of their production? How much of a sacrifice is it? There's so much I don't know there. But what I do know is somebody's going to have to do it, and they're going to have to do it at a high level because the Canes blue line is never, as long as you're doing okay, right? As long as you're not a disaster. They are always playing with super high expectations. So whoever's playing offhand, whoever's playing the opposite side is going to have to figure out a way to do it at a super high level. And that just, with every other sport, you ask somebody to throw with their offhand, they're going to look ridiculous. You ask somebody, I guess switch hitter, that might be the only other thing where it's possible. But if you ask a traditional right-handed swinging baseball player to go that's, I know it's not apples for apples, but I'm saying it seems really difficult from where I'm sitting, even if it's not.
So as a defenseman, especially if you're trying to clear the puck up the boards, if you're left-handed and you're on your left side, you're on your strong hand, you're on your forehand, it's a lot easier to control the puck, making passes, or you're trying to go off the boards, whatever it might be. If you're trying to do it on your backhand, you have a lot less control, and sometimes you have to take an extra step just to get control of the puck on your backhand, which that extra half a second might be the difference between getting a puck clear or someone closing in on you. And also sometimes when you're in transition, taking passes on your backhand is a lot more difficult to do than receiving it on your forehand. So it's not an easy thing. There are definitely guys that can do it. I've zero doubt that Jacob Slavin could do it. No problem. No problem at all.
I agree with that. I just don't think he'll be the one asked to because he's Jacob Slavin.
Exactly. Or maybe he is the one asked to do it because he's Jacob Slavin. You never know. So it's not an easy thing to do, but there are some guys who grow up doing it out of necessity and they just get so comfortable with it that they're just used to it.
It's one of those things that we'll talk about a lot in the offseason. But I guarantee you, if somebody playing on their offhand takes that extra beat to possess the puck and they turn it over, we're not going to give them the benefit of any doubt. Fans are going to, that's an awful in your own zone turnover. It just has to be at a high level. Here's Brind'amour earlier today on the Adam Gold Show on the disadvantages of playing on your offside on defense.
Moving guys over to their offsides is not ideal. especially in today's game with the puck pressure that everyone puts on. So people don't understand that it's tough when you jam a guy up and he's got to take that extra second to handle it on his offside. All of a sudden, that's how turnovers happen. So what you mentioned, having Ghost go over there, he's one of our more talented players, so that makes sense, right? Like if you're just, sitting there going, well, let's try him because he probably can handle it the best. But like we said, there's going to be a lot of, I think, experimentation in that group, but I think every option should be a solid one.
Again, it goes back to my reaction to his first thing. It sounds like we're going to try it all, and whichever one works best, we're going to do that until it no longer works best, and then we're going to do the next thing.
I wouldn't be surprised if it starts off Slavin and Sean Walker, and then it's Keandre Miller and Jalen Chatfield, and then it's Nikishin with Gostisbehere on his offside. Wouldn't surprise to see that.
I think that would make a lot of sense as a starting point.
Yeah. I
think it would make a lot of sense as a starting point. And I very much love those top four, and I'm very much a fan of Nikishin. And I mean, especially with his special teams contributions, I really like Gostisbehere. So it's a good problem to have. We got these 6 really good defensemen that you like for a lot. We got to figure out how to play them. And it's a good problem to have for a guy like Rod Brind'amour because I trust him to come up with the move and make it happen. But there are still a lot of questions. Now that the roster seems kind of solidified and who's going to be on it, still a lot of questions with who plays where and what the future of it looks like.